The pre-sale for badges to the Rose City ComicCon is underway. It's coming to the Oregon Convention Center September 6th through 8th, and this year's lineup is stacked. Hayden Christensen, aka Anakin Skywalker, will be there, so will Rosario Dawson from movies like Death Proof, Sin City, and Men in Black 2, and Simon Pegg from Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Freaking Simon Pegg! Plus a ton of cast members from your favorite shows and movies, along with your favorite comic book artists, authors, and so much more. Go buy your badges now at rosecitycomiccon.com. Portland Spirit has teamed up with Cliff Barackman, star of Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot, to create a truly unique Northwest experience, the Bigfoot Adventure Cruise. On this 3.5-hour jet boat tour, you'll explore the history of local sightings of Bigfoot while traveling 80 miles round trip from Portland to Multnomah Falls. You'll see famous landmarks in the Columbia River Gorge while also listening to exclusive narration by Cliff Barackman, recorded just for this cruise. Now, this cruise is offered daily except Tuesday through the end of September. So if you haven't done a jet boat cruise, now is the time. You can go see the schedule and book tickets at portlandspirit.com.
Today on Citycast Portland, we're talking about the grand opening of PDX's stunning new airport terminal. The water tiger art that's caused a ton of controversy at City Hall, and free meals coming for every student in the Portland public school system. Joining me are Willamette Week reporter Sophie Peel and our very own producer, Giulia Fiaoni. It's Friday, August 16th. I'm John Notarianni in for Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome to the Friday News Roundup. Sophie, Giulia, how's it going?
Good. Good morning.
Good morning. So this is the day that we like to look at some of the big headlines of the week, the big news that has caught our attention, and to share it with all of you. But before we get started, we like to have an opening question to introduce you to who's in the room, get the conversation flowing a little bit. And today, my opening question is based in a story that you're going to be bringing a little bit later, Giulia. This major renovation of the PDX airport just completed.
Yeah.
The project is still ongoing in some ways. It's going to be like over $2 billion of investment once it all gets done. So my question to the two of you, what iconic Portland place would you invest $2 billion into if you had the opportunity? And this doesn't need to be like a giant infrastructure project. If you want to put like $2 billion into your favorite restaurant, I say like by all means, go for it. So here's what I'm thinking. I would put $2 billion into transit infrastructure. I think that's something that we agree we can all use. But the way I would do it is by building roller coasters across the city. So you could like take a roller coaster from St. John's like all the way into downtown, and we could give them like cool roller coaster names as well, right? So you could take like the Green Dragon from like Selwood to the other side of the river. I think $2 billion worth of roller coasters just stretching all across Portland would make everyone really happy.
So would this replace the bus and TriMet system as is? Like, are you forced to take a roller coaster to get somewhere now?
No, it's multimodal transit.
It's optional.
So yeah, exactly. You can take a light rail, you can take a Max train, you can take a Green Dragon roller coaster. It's up to you.
It's kind of fabulous. I'm really on board for that. I think I went for a more selfish angle with this when the first idea popped up into my head. I immediately thought of Laurel Hurst Park. It's one of my favorite places to go. It's near where I live. And I think every time I go there, the one thing I wish I could do is actually swim in that pond. If you listen to previous episodes, I've mentioned this before. So I would want to put money into making that a swimmable lake. But then also, second part to it is I always wish that there were more permanent food vendors within the park. And the one thing I think Portland really lacks is 24-hour diners. So we get somewhere to swim, and then a 24-hour diner kind of tucked in between the trees. I don't think I'd ever leave that park if that was the case.
$2 billion, though, that's a nice swimming hole.
Right?
That's like the fanciest diner I've ever seen in my life.
It's just, I mean, get imaginative. It can kind of be endless from there. Like, you figure out more things you need as you go on. It just sounds so dreamy to me.
You're going to make every other park so sad. It's like who's going to go to Irving Park when there's a $2 billion 24-hour diner at Laurel Hurst? What about you, Sophie?
Here's a tough one. I think like over the past 2 years, if I could spend all my free time doing one thing, I think it would be doing like recreational sports. Like
really? I thought you were going to go for
sport.
grocery shopping again.
It's a close second.
Sophie loves grocery shopping.
I do. I forgot about that. Yeah. But I think I would just like outfit the city with tennis courts and with pickleball courts and with swimming pools and with beach volleyball courts. And then I would like stand up an agency to like micromanage everything. So it was very like you could find the appropriate level and you would have specific times that you would go and like you would fill every single hour after your work playing recreational sports.
That sounds kind of amazing.
I
That's
know.
a really good idea.
That like of our three ideas, yours is the one that like both seems kind of feasible and would actually make this a better place to live.
We could be like the recreational sport capital of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be good. But like
No.
it's one of the frustrating things I've found about recreational sports in Portland is that like it's very hard to find like appropriate levels. Like I played volleyball in college and like sometimes I'll go to like a pickup volleyball thing and it's just not fun because like the levels are so different. This agency would be very good about like ranking people.
Yeah.
So you could get in an appropriate level. This sounds very annoying.
Now that sounds awesome. Yeah. So I have some friends that are really into futsal and have been playing for years, and they're just like, "Come play, come join us, come join a game." I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to just like jump on and play at your guys' level. You've been doing this for like a decade.
So this is a bit of a tangent, but like 2 summers ago, I had a couple friends that were really into kickball. And they were like, we just need an extra. Like we're down a couple people. We really need it. And they were like, we're the champs. Like we've won several years in a row. And I was like, yeah, I'm athletic. I bet I can fill in. And like, I am not kidding you. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done. One, I didn't know the rules. I didn't know that you had to stop at the base. I thought you could just touch it and run past it. So like the first time I ran and then I touched the base and I sort of like careened off. And everyone freaked out at me. And I had like 6 people just like yelling at me. And I never went back. I was like, this is horrible. I hated that. It was very stressful.
You got intimidated out of kickball.
Absolutely, I did. Yes. I was like, I'm the Achilles tendon of the champs, and I can't beat that.
I love it. I'm on board. I think, if there's any angel investors out there, $6 billion, and we can revolutionize Portland, you guys. We can put us back on the map, back on top with these ideas.
I'm in.
All right. Well, Giulia, I gave a little preview of your story, but walk us through it. What are you talking about today?
Yeah, this main terminal opening at PDX Airport. I feel like everybody's talking about it right now. And I actually got to visit earlier this week.
Yes.
And I must say, it was even more beautiful than I had expected. I'd seen photos and have been talking about it for the past year with various people who've been in charge with putting it all together. And I don't think I could have imagined what it actually looks like when you're standing there. So I'm going to try my best to take you both through that experience. So just to start, this thing took 4 years of construction to pull off and over 30,000 people involved to get this thing done. And everyone was local and regional to the area and expertise of all kinds, right? There were architects and construction workers and local tribe members, chefs. Everyone was kind of coming at it, firing off at all cylinders, trying to make this the best that it could be. And 30,000 people, like that's more people than that fit in Providence Park. So just to give you an idea of like the sheer teamwork that's going on for this. But although I visited, I am going to pull some reporting from Lizzie Acker at the Oregonian and Anthony McCook at KGW. So to start, this is just the first stage of the project. So the north and south areas of the terminal are now going to be closed for phase 2, but it is about 2/3 of the way done of the full $2.15 billion deal. But it's a complete ground up rebuild from the ticket counters to security lines with a new 392,000 square foot wood beam ceiling, which is the thing I really want to nerd out about because I think it's like just such a testament to the thoughtfulness that went into making this all happen. The whole idea was to kind of evoke the same feeling that you have walking through the forest really anywhere in Oregon. And they took a kind of literal approach to that. They ended up using 2.6 million feet of dug for wood to try to capture this. And what makes it really special is that there's 49 different skylights to kind of elicit that feeling of the sun rays coming through the trees. And it really does feel that way. There's something calming about it that's really special and notable. But there are also actual trees throughout the terminal, like massive trees in pots dispersed throughout. And there will be, at the end of this, over 5,000 plants just throughout the terminal as well. And then in the places that they couldn't have actual nature installed, they have these massive screens that show these different nature scenes that are going to change with the seasons and are developed by local artists. So every time you go, depending on when you're traveling, you'll see something different, which is wild. So like already totally immersive. They really took the time to do it right. So they ended up sourcing the timber over 6 years, and they worked with small landowners and regional tribes within 300 miles of the airport in Oregon and in Washington to harvest the trees sustainably to make sure that they're still preserving the forests. But they also put it together in this really fascinating way. So they built the ceiling, this massive ceiling, on a field nearby to the airport, cut it into 18 different pieces that were about football field size pieces, each weighing like over 600,000 pounds, and then brought those individual pieces to the airport and glued it all together. It's just like all of these things, and this isn't even getting into like the fun of being there with the vendors, but like it just blows my mind how it all came together. I don't know. What are your first thoughts on this? I don't know if either of you have been yet, but
I haven't. I mean, Giulia, I know you and Claudia were able to go on Monday. I wasn't able to make it. When I saw the photos coming back, I was a little bit jealous of you guys because I'd seen the artist renderings of this space, and I'm like, well, that looks really cool. But then I saw the photos coming out now that it's actually starting to open up, and it's like, oh my God, it really does look that breathtaking. It like it's almost surreal how gorgeous it is.
I have so many thoughts. One, this is a question. Where did the funding come from?
Yeah, so it's actually paid for by the airlines that fly out of PDX, which I think is really smart. I wouldn't have thought that that's how they would approach it, but that's where it all comes from.
Do you know if those airlines are doing similar renovations in other airports, or like was this a competitive process?
I don't know. That's a good question, but I'm not sure. They didn't, I mean, believe it or not, at the opening, they didn't talk about anything but PDX because they were so excited about it. But there might be something there. I'm not sure.
I mean, and there is part of it that this is also going to really expand the passenger capacity at the airport too, right? Like once the entire thing is done, they're going to be able to bring a lot more people through the airport. So I'm sure that airlines aren't mad about that either.
Yeah.
My other question too, and I'm sure that everyone thought about this before like investing $2 billion in this, but like, you know, there's certain cities like Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta, and I mean, I don't know, the other ones that are like launching off points for a bunch of international travel. Like, I would imagine the airlines didn't invest as much in the Portland airport if there wasn't like capacity or demand for this big of a space. And I'm just curious, like, do we think that the airport's foot traffic is going to increase because of this? Like, is there a demand for this much of a bigger space, I guess?
Yeah, I wonder about that too. And I can speak on at least the hopefulness of that, where many of the speakers that were there, like Governor Kotek and Mayor Ted Wheeler, and even some local artists and native tribe leaders, all really like came behind this idea of like how much of a win it was for Oregon as a state, but also specifically Portland, because it's such a like just slap in the face to all the negative press that's been going on over the past like 5 years.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting just as like a sort of messaging tourism type of move, right? And I think that this is something that PDX has been pretty smart about for years, of like trying to reflect the culture of the Pacific Northwest in the airport itself. And like even before this renovation, you'd go through PDX and there would be, you know, like a Tender Loving Empire store and like a mini Hollywood theater and like these things that feel very Portland in a way that you do not feel at other airports across the country, right? And sort of moving in that direction of having travelers' first impressions of our region be sort of mirrored in the design of this space. Like, if I'd never been to Portland before and the first thing I see is like walking into that like crazy, amazing, beautiful domed ceiling, I'd be like, wow, this is really great.
No, it really sets the tone.
Wasn't Portland like voted the best airport for a number of years, and then the past couple of years we weren't?
I want to say that sounds right.
If
but I'm
so,
not
I feel
sure.
like this is just like a big middle finger to like the other airports that like bested us the past couple of years. Like, watch out, we're back.
You know, it's funny, Sophie, that you point out that like, what's the word for it? Like the middle finger, but I want like a proper word for that. Like, gotcha. What is the word?
Fuck you, I believe is the term of art.
You know what? Let's just roll with it. So speaking on that, like, fuck you, all their airports were back, bitches. They really did go above and beyond with some of the, I guess, like intentions with the space. So like, first of all, it's twice as big as the original main terminal and it uses half the amount of energy. And all the vendors inside are all local. I'm going to list some of those off to you. So there's Pendleton, Sizzle Pie, Blue Star Donuts, Grassa, Freeland Spirits, Portland Gear, Portland Coffee Roasters, Powell's Books. It goes on and on. But like, not only that, they also took it a step above, like within the vendor spaces. So Loyal Legion Bar is in this like mezzanine area looking over the main terminal up these like beautiful stadium staircases on either side. And they have 96 taps of Oregon beer available. Like, what airport has that?
God bless the gate agents who are dealing with all of the people coming through after spending their time at Loyal Legion on their
Well, and
way
here's
here.
the thing, too, is that space specifically and a few others, much of the main terminal, what you can imagine you'd go and see is accessible by the public without a plane ticket. So you can go and get a beer just to check it out, which I think is really special, too.
Again, I'm jealous that you already made it, but I'm actually going to be at PDX tomorrow. I'm taking a flight on Saturday. So,
oh, John, you'll
Yeah.
have to send us a photo of the vintage carpet. I have to say it is back.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. I will send you photos and I will report back next week on my experience of actually traveling through PDX.
that's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Cool. Well, let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, more headlines of the week.
If you're a home DIYer like me, you might have some leftover paint gathering dust in your basement. But I'm happy to share that Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter, reducing waste, and helping you get back some of that much-needed storage space. First, buy the right amount of paint for the job. Paint Care has 6 questions to ask yourself when buying paint that can help ensure you have enough while minimizing waste. Second, you use up what's left. Before you break out the paintbrush and tape, see if you have any leftover paint that can save you a trip to the store. Paint Care's website also offers helpful tips for storing paint properly so it lasts for years. And third, if you still have paint, stain, or varnish left over, Paint Care makes it easy to recycle it with convenient drop-off locations as close as your local hardware store. And you can go learn more at paintcare.org/3simplerules.
Well, Sophie, this is a saga that you've been reporting on for a couple months. Big scandal at City Hall. What are we talking about?
I don't know if it really can be categorized as a big scandal.
Oh, it's
but
a big scandal.
I appreciate
It's the biggest scandal coming out of City Hall in the last 50 years.
So it's the water tiger saga. It really starts with one man, and that is Mayor Ted Wheeler's chief of staff, who's a guy named Bobby Lee, and he was at Prosper Portland, like a decade ago. And then he went to Seattle and worked for their development commission, and then came back in 2021 to work as Wheeler's chief of staff. And in 2022, sort of when the city was really struggling to come back from the pandemic and, downtown was sort of hollowed out, he became really enamored with the symbol of the Chinese water tiger, which is a symbol of courage and power and strength in Chinese culture. In 2022 actually happened to be the year of the Chinese water tiger. So he sort of adopted it as the city's kind of unofficial mascot, and he really embraced it. I mean, he had water tiger merch. He wore shirts that said water tiger on it. He still wears a hat to this day, almost every single day, that says water tiger on it. And he would invoke the water tiger in, kind of unofficial and official sort of forums. I mean, it was just everyone who knows Bobby Lee, like he's sort of synonymous with the water tiger. Anyways, in mid-2023, Bobby Lee had directed Prosper Portland, which is the city's economic development agency, to spend $30,000 of its budget on water tiger art for the Waterfront Blues Festival. And so Prosper Portland did that. They funneled $30,000 to the nonprofit that runs the Waterfront Blues Festival, and $24,000 of that $30K went towards this huge mural of the water tiger. Fast forward to December of 2023, and once again, Bobby Lee reached out to Prosper Portland's executive director, Kimberly Branham, and said, hey, can you do me a solid? I'll pay you back. But can you spend another $30,000 on additional water tiger art for the Winter Lights Festival that happened in February of 2024?
Yeah, and that's not a euphemism, right? That was like actually a quote, right?
Yes. Direct quote is, can you do me a solid? And he did say, I'll recompensate you or something to that effect. It was unclear how exactly he planned to do that, like from what budget. But he did say, I'll pay you back, basically. So Prosper Portland complied. And so a total of $60,000 in taxpayer funds went to water tiger art, pretty much at the sole discretion of Bobby Lee, which is really not typical, especially when, agencies are really supposed to make their own decisions about how to use their money, not be at the whim of a chief of staff to the mayor. Another thing to keep in mind, sort of part of this dynamic, is that the mayor sets the budget for the bureaus. And so is Prosper Portland really going to take the chance of denying the mayor's chief of staff twice for kind of very personal funding things? So the other important wrinkle that I've failed to mention up until this point is that the artist who created the water tiger designs for both of these events is the niece of Bobby Lee's ex-girlfriend, who was a top City Hall staffer in Commissioner Mingus Mapp's office until she left last year.
Yeah, and was she like a multi-decade established career artist? Had she been like producing works for years and years and years?
No,
at a professional
she's
level?
17.
No, she's 17.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's an important detail as well.
And she's a good artist, and she seems like a really great kid. And like what I've tried to emphasize throughout this whole thing is that like this has nothing to do with her. Like it really doesn't. She has no fault in this. Yeah, this is a Bobby Lee issue. I just want to make that clear. So actually, at the time, the first $30,000 was allocated. Bobby Lee was actively dating this staffer, and then for the second $30,000, at that point, they were exes. So yeah, I think it has raised a lot of questions about Bobby Lee, sort of how he wields power in City Hall. What I've kind of heard has resounded with people is sort of this idea of soft power, right? Yeah. It's not like he threatened them and said, do this or else. But when you have the mayor's chief of staff who sets your budget saying, hey, please spend $60,000 on this, what are you going to do? Say no? So yeah, it's been a really interesting month reporting on it.
I love this as like a defining abuse of power in Portland city government. It's like, we're not like funneling millions of dollars away from education programs. We're not even like giving grants to like business associates. We are wielding our power to spend $60,000 on art because we're just really into this animal.
Yeah, I think what has frustrated me throughout the reporting of this is that, on the public dais, like, Portland City leaders talk about all our problems, and we have real problems in our city. And the fact that we are spending $60,000 at the whim of one man on art, especially the mayor's chief of staff, like he has bigger fish to fry than to spend so much time finding money for a pet project. It is just like, it frustrates me.
What about you, Giulia? What strikes you here?
I wonder about the urgency in the request. That quote of like, can you do me a solid? It requires immediate funding. So funny to me based off of what you just said, Sophie. There are so many other things that could require immediate funding and are just not being addressed. First of all, it also makes it seem like, and maybe I'm just leaning into the potential drama of this, that he's like trying to create some sort of grand gesture to maybe get his like ex-girlfriend back.
No comment.
Not at all true or based in any sort of reality, but I like to imagine that that's the case. And I wonder if like it was intentionally poorly planned last minute so that the only option was to get this artist that he knew to fill the space to have this art piece at this event, which whether or not it was intentional, you're just not doing your job right. You know, like it's not something that should not be the standard at this point, especially with how much Portland as a city is going through with a change of government coming up and so many things to keep track of. This seems like something that shouldn't even be a worry or a concern with someone in that type of position of power.
What are local leaders saying about this? Like, what is Prosper Portland saying, who's on the other end of this funding? Like, what is the mayor saying, who is like ostensibly Bobby Lee's boss?
It has been crickets from the mayor. I have not heard a thing. I've asked for comment from him several times, and I've heard nothing. City commissioners have sort of had different takes on it. Commissioners Dan Ryan and Renee Gonzalez have come out pretty strongly against the spending, basically saying it was inappropriate and that if their chiefs of staff had done it, they would basically ask the appropriate authority to like look into it, whether it was the auditor's office or whoever. Carmen Rubio has said, you know, I trust this process and I'm supportive of the art. So basically she was like, there's, you know, nothing to see here. Mings Maps didn't comment. Bobby Lee has maintained that nothing he did was inappropriate and that this was the type of thing that Portland needed to get back on its feet and inspire city employees. Prosper Portland has really not commented on any of they've answered questions very factually about what happened in the timeline of things, but they really haven't commented on whether this was an inappropriate or appropriate thing. I think that's largely because they're implicated in this too. I mean, it shows that didn't take a lot of convincing from Bobby Lee to get them to fund this. And I think, again, they were put in an uncomfortable position of the mayor's chief of staff basically telling them, but not really telling them to fund this thing. And so they are in a bit of a difficult position, but I also don't think it reflects well on them either.
Oof, what a mess. Well, thank you for all your reporting on this. I look forward to the next chapter in the saga. Like this,
we'll see if there is any.
Yeah, this is straight to the Pulitzer Prize, Sophie.
Oh, I'm sure.
This is what's going to get you there. Well, the story that I'm looking at this week is about lunch. A lot of this is on the back of reporting from Julia Silverman at The Oregonian. Portland Public Schools students are going back into the classroom in a couple weeks. August 27th and 28th are the first few days of school. And the big news that came out this week is that all students are going to be offered free breakfast and lunch this year. They'll be automatically enrolled in this program. They don't have to put in an application. There had been a program to do this sort of via federal pandemic money, but that went away last year. But now PPS has found a couple funding sources where they're able to do this and to offer it to every school in the district. And there's obviously been sort of a groundswell of support for this. There's a lot of other places in the region that are doing it. Beaverton is also going to be expanding free meals this fall. And there's some rumblings that a number of other districts across the state are going to be offering this once they put out their full plan for the fall as well. But it's a big deal. Parents are psyched. What do you guys think?
I think this is like the best news of the week. I can't find any issues with it. And maybe there are, but like it just seems like this and the PDX terminal, it's felt like a fairly positive like groundswell this week. Obviously there's been a ton of studies that have shown that like if a kid doesn't have an adequate breakfast or lunch, like they can't focus as well. They might have more behavioral issues. Like it is such a simple thing to like ensure that kids just have a baseline of what they need to like learn. Like there's no question about whether that's like a fact or not. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. I think one thing that really stands out to me, John, is something you mentioned. That automatic enrollment, I think, is key. Mm-hmm. Just taking away one more barrier for kids to access this. Because the thing is that, like, not all families are in the same need, but groceries are expensive for everybody right now. And one week looks different from the next. And even students who are just more forgetful or parents that are more stressed out and not remembering to make sure that their kids are set up and fed before they go to school is just one less thing people have to worry about across the board. And to go there and know that you're already set up, you can just get in line and eat is really like thoughtful and makes school feel like a little bit more homey, I feel like, if you're sharing a meal with your fellow classmates and everyone feels like they're kind of on the same level. There's something really sweet about that.
Yeah. And I mean, there's just so many, I mean, obviously the equity issue of like students who wouldn't have had that support at home to get fed now have it baked in. It sort of takes out the disparity among students. The nutrition of it is like actually really solid too. Like the district is being really, really intentional of like making sure that there's like endless fruits and vegetables for kids. And, you know,
Yeah.
Which, okay, I have to say, I think that is like the one part of this that kind of made me giggle, because if it were like endless, you know, the district never would have been like endless cereal or endless candy. Like they're only offering endless fruits and vegetables because they know no kid is going to be like,
exactly,
let me go back for a third serving of broccoli.
$3,000 of this is going towards fruits and vegetables.
It's like that was smart. That was good.
Well, I mean, like I said, this is a big change, not just in Portland, but like across the state. 70% of schools in Oregon are going to be offering free meals this year. That's up from like 55% a year ago. And there has been an effort to mandate this statewide as well. There was some legislation to fund it that sort of petered out in the 2023 session, but they are looking at bringing it back in 2025. So it's possible that in a couple of years, this could just be the state of affairs across all of Oregon.
That's so cool.
Something else I noticed, I did some sort of digging around in the Portland Public Schools website. There's going to be free lunch, free breakfast for kids, but there's also prices for adults and visitors.
Oh.
So for adults and visitors, lunch is only going to be $6, which means if we make friends with some like
Oh my
some
God,
like
John.
With a
middle
third
schoolers
grader,
or some
yeah.
third graders, we could just like be balling at the Portland Public Schools buffet. Free, like endless vegetables. Like we're old, we'll get down on some broccoli,
That's
right?
a steal. $6?
That's where it's at.
Wow. Can I take a to-go container?
Oh yeah, yeah, for
Seriously.
sure.
Those little
So-
bags of milk, sign me up.
I think, like forget the food court at the airport. I'm just going back to high school.
That's great.
I didn't have a plan way to get out of that. Do you guys have anything else, or do you want me to like move toward?
No, I was wondering how you were going to like wrap that up.
All right. Well, thanks so much for breaking down the news with me this week. Sophie, Giulia, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for us this week here on Citycast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our producers this week were Giulia Fiaoni, Francisco Kilgore, and Selena C.A. Reynolds. Our Hey Portland newsletter editors were Rachel Monahan and Adrian Gonzalez. Our host is Claudia Meza. I'm executive producer John Notarianni. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drisos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back on Monday with a lot more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.